Welcome YouTube channel alltipspm.
Topic: Political violence. Question: What are the causes and forms of political violence? Answer: Political violence is a collective violent action of a group of people against the government to highlight its discontent. It may be a protest against a particular policy of the government, it may be used to remove a particular government from power, or it may be taken recourse to for the change of political system. Aggression and violence have been a part of human history since long. Besieged men take to violence and aggression to secure things that they did not possess or to preserve things that they possessed. Normally, political violence is directed against the state, its property and men who manage its institutions. Political violence may begin with rioting or mass demonstrations. But it is always possible that it assumes different forms. Aristotle was the first political scientist who discussed the nature and causes of political disorder. He pointed out that change in the balance of social forces in a particular state was responsible for political disorder. The Indian political thinker Kautilya Chanakya was of the opinion that change in the attitude of one on people is revolt. It results from a wrong policy of the government and immodest behavior of the king. Thus, since ancient times, political violence has caused disorder in the state, and in modern times, the problem of political violence has become more marked and complex. General causes. Generally, political violence has been a result of bad government. Kautilya in his Arthashastra said that wrong policies of the government and immodest behavior of the rulers give birth to revolts of the people. Wrong and oppressive policies of the government create resentment in the minds of the people, and the people rise violently to change the wrong policies. Excessive taxation, a hike in the price of essential commodities, deliberate disregard of law and morality in the exercise of power, unjust treatment meted out to certain sections of society, deliberate neglect of certain regions of the state, political incompetence and misgovernment, and excessive and tactless use of force to put down peaceful agitation are the general causes of violence. The concept of national self-determination. During the last 2 centuries, a large number of countries of Third World came under foreign control. They became colonies of Western countries. People in the Third World countries wanted to free themselves from foreign domination. Hence, they waged violent struggles against the foreign rule. In modern times, the American settlers were the first to take to arms to free their country from British rule. Due to the pacifist ideas of Mahatma Gandhi, the Indian liberation movement remained largely non-violent, though there were certain armed revolutionaries like Savarkar, Bhagat Bhagat Singh and Subhash Chandra Bose in India also. After the Second World War, a large number of Third World countries became independent. Certain regions in these states that had a distinct cultural or religious identity demanded the right of self-determination for their province. The supporters of national self-determination movement called it a movement for national liberation, while the opponents of these movements called them secessionist movements. In India, are facing these types of movements in Jammu and Kashmir, Nagaland, Manipur and Assam. Most of the third world countries are facing this problem. Even developed countries like Great Britain and Canada faced the problem of secession in Northern Ireland and Quebec respectively. The Irish Republican Army and the LTTE in Sri Lanka are the most dreaded separatist groups in the world. Ideology. In modern times, ideology has played an important role in the road of political violence. Ideology mobilizes people and gives them a certain cause to a struggle against the state. Ideology explains the present conditions of society and asks the people to change it to bring about a better system of governance. Most of the movements in modern times are ideological in character. Fascism and socialism were two such ideologies. The ideology of revolutionary socialism moved a large number of people who were involved in violent revolutionary activities. The socialists stand for the abolition of the capitalist system, which is based on state violence. We have examples of successful revolutions like the Russian Revolution, the Chinese Revolution and the Cuban Revolution. The socialists argue that they take recourse to violence to counter state violence. There are a large number of countries which are witnessing violent socialist uprisings. India, Nepal, Indonesia, Burma are the countries that witnessed violent revolutionary activities by the socialists. In India, the Naxalites are involved in revolutionary political activities. Religious and ethnic conflicts. Most of the countries of the world are inhabited by the people who adhere to different religious fetiches and belong to different ethnic communities. Therefore, there are religious and ethnic minorities in most of the countries. The moment force is applied to advance this policy, these communities take recourse to resistance and violence. Culturally and ethnically, modern societies are not homogeneous. Cultural and ethnic minorities want to preserve their separate identity. Hence, they want to secure and protect their rights. These minorities are formed on the basis of race, language and culture. They take to violence if they feel threatened. Quebec Province in Canada, Nagaland in India, Northern Ireland in Great Britain, the Chechens in Russia, Tibetans in China and Kurds in Iraq and Iran are examples of this. Minorities are concerned about their identity and majorities question their political loyalty. In some cases like Sri Lanka, the struggle of minorities assumed the form of separatist violence, which culminated in insurrection. Political disputes between different groups of the elite. Governing elite in each state consists of groups, factions, and these groups and factions are involved in power politics. These groups and factions use violent methods to secure support of the people by organizing street demonstrations, communal riots and sabotage. A group, well established in the government, uses coercive powers of state institutions to curb this violence. Political disputes among the elite may result in splits and divisions in the ruling group. The dissident group many times incites violence against the ruling group or take help of a faction in the army to capture political power. These military takeovers are often very violent and cause a large-scale bloodshed. V. Economic conditions and the concept of relative deprivation. Economic conditions give birth to different types of political violence because they generate resentment in the minds of the people. It is the wrong policies of the government that favor certain sections of the society and push a large section of the people below poverty line. Due to the wrong policies of the government, there is growing inflation, declining living standards of the people, price rise, unemployment and non-availability of essential commodities in the market. When a section of people begins to believe that it is being deliberately deprived of the valued goods to which it is entitled, it takes recourse to agitation. The sources of deprivation lie in social processes, which cause a gap between what people are entitled to and what they receive. In modern times, due to education, learning of new skills, new consumption levels and advertisements create a feeling of deprivation in the minds of the people. The feeling of relative deprivation thus gives birth to political violence. II. Support by neighboring political violence, especially sustained political violence in a state always gets support from the neighboring countries, which are hostile. The foreign country gives support in the form of arms, money, training and shelter. For example, political violence in Jammu and Kashmir is supported by Pakistan. America gave support to rebels in Cuba, Nicaragua, Libya and Iraq, which are accused of supporting the Islamic terrorist network. Forms of political violence. I. Violent protest by the people against the government. Normally, people take recourse to violence when the entire constitutional means available to them fail. The violent protests of the people assume different forms. The violent protests of unorganized mobs cause large-scale damage because they attack the symbols of government authorities such as government offices, railways and beaches. They try to disrupt normal functioning of the government. This type of violence is sporadic in nature and it is down after registering protest. But, due to the violent rioting, the governments tend to amend their policies to avoid the spread of violence. Sometimes, they organize violent demonstrations and morchas. If the central authority of the government is weak and it lacks legitimacy, a well-organized demonstration may cause the downfall of the government. But this rarely happens. Otherwise, the impact of violent protests of the mobs is temporary in nature because the government uses repressive measures to control it. II. Terrorism. In modern times, terrorism has become one of the important forms of political violence as a large number of young people join terrorist groups to bring about change in the government. The weapon of terrorism is used by terrorists because they know that they cannot launch an open war against the state as the state has a superior force at its command. But terrorists are determined to use violent methods because it is their opinion that opponents understand the language of the gun. Their power in society is also based on the gun. Terrorists use all sorts of methods to teach a lesson to the state authorities. Their activities start with blowing up of a bridge or breaching a wall of a dam. But in the process, they expand the area of their operation. Lead. Terrorists take recourse to crime, but they are not ordinary criminals because they are ideologically motivated and they have a vision of establishing a better society. Terrorist activities are legitimate by their ideology. You can see three distinct phases of ideological orientation of terrorism. In its first phase, national independence was its goal. In the second phase after the Second World War, most of the terrorists showed their allegiance to revolutionary socialism and at present, their orientation is religious fundamentalism or ethnic separatism. Every terrorist movement has its own group of intellectuals who rationalize the use of violence. III, military revolts and takeovers. In modern times, the military or the armed forces of the country are playing an important role in the politics of the third world countries. Because they are the only well-organized force available in societies which have not undergone the process of state and nation building. Involvement of military in political violence assumes two forms: 1. The mutiny of soldiers, and 2. Military takeover or coup d'etat. All over the world, disgruntled elements in the armed forces rebel against the government. This revolt is called mutiny. Due to some economic or political reasons, the soldiers take to arms and get involved in violent activities. IV. Revolts and rebellions. We have seen that terrorist violence or even military revolts do not need the support of the masses. It is essentially an action carried out by a determined group of people. But revolts and rebellions take place because of popular disaffection. Revolts represent the anger of certain sections of society and they are aimed at changing the policy of the government or change in the government. The revolts may take place in different parts of the country and the demands of the rebels may be very specific. If the revolts are accompanied by a high degree of organization and with the tacit approval of wide sections of the population, one can say that they have assumed a serious form. It includes large-scale terrorism and civil war. The revolt may develop into a rebellion. Rebellion is the second stage of revolt in the sense that in this phase, the rebels are ideologically committed and they have developed a vision of future society. Due to the normally socialist or the nationalist ideology, they are supported by a large number of people. If the rebels are able to concentrate in a geographically peripheral area or the area outside the efficient control of the state, and if foreign support is available to them, the rebellion assumes the form of armed insurrection, which cannot be easily put down. War. War is the culmination of political violence in the sense that war brings forth two contending forces face to face with each other and settles the issue on the basis of balance of armed forces. War is assault as human history, and violence and bloodshed are at the heart of it. There are two types of wars: one, war with the external enemy of the country, and two, internal war, which takes place between the state forces and the rebels, civil war. The external war causes widespread damage and destruction. Both the parties use massive armies, modern weapons of mass destruction, and air force. The First World War accounted for 1,000,000 deaths, and the Second World War was the most destructive of all wars. Atomic weapons were used by the user to settle the issue. Internal war is fought between the forces of a central government and the secessionist forces. Internal war is equally destructive, and it may cause widespread destruction and massacres. We have examples of violent internal wars in Lebanon, Yugoslavia, Nigeria, and India. Thus, political violence assumes different forms in modern times. Revolution is also a particular form of political violence.